All right, Drake, thanks for chatting with me today. For those of you guys watching this, Drake and I were both fired on Thursday, and it was unexpected and it sucks. I don't know about you, Drake, but I've never been fired before, and I've never even like really been in bad graces with an employer before. I've always had this, view of myself of being, I don't know, the good employee that all my employers want to have working for them, right? So it's been really rough, and we figured we'd come together and we'd talk a little bit about what those early moments were like of getting fired, because we know there's a lot of people going through that right now, whether it's truly being fired or just being downsized. There's a lot of people losing their jobs. But then also talk about what that process looks like of picking yourself up off the floor, doing the next right thing, and what these last few days have been like for us as we've gone from total shock to having at least a bit of a plan in place and starting to take some steps. So
All
again,
right.
thanks, Drake, for this.
No worries.
I guess to start off, I guess the first question would be, to let you know, hey, Drake, you're getting sacked, right?
Yeah.
Did you have how easy was it for you to form a narrative and a story of what you told yourself and how you interpreted that event? Was it something that made perfect sense and you understood it all and you were able to like weave a narrative of where you went wrong and where the company went wrong and what you need to change and weave that story together quickly? Or was it hard to put together a story and make sense of it all?
It was it was sudden. It was the fact that it was unexpected. So just quick reference on it all. I struggled out of the gate. I mean, the my company's training was very in depth, very thorough, and I out of the gate after training, I focused too much on a handful of accounts and not building the pipeline. And so I knew I'd struggled out of the gate, and I thought I had a chance to recover because was given kind of a new territory plan, still same territory, but new, went from two AEs to one AE, some shifts with some other BDRs. And so I was thinking, fresh start here for August. And mid-August, I had my normal one-on-one with my boss, and she was a very, very, very sweet. She was very motherly, and she was very, even even in firing, she was very nice about it. But I came on the chat. I was a few minutes late because I just finished a webinar that we had, and she said, "Hey, I have HR with me," and that was it. And it was just like my immediate reaction was, my head was down. I was shocked. My wife's a teacher, so I text her. I didn't call her. I text her and just said, "Hey, you need to call me." And the first few moments were shocked. Again, I knew I had struggled the first couple months, but that August, because again, this happened just last week, mid-August, I was starting to, turn it around. I was starting to build my pipeline. I had a couple meetings that I had set up, and one with a really large size publication company. And again, it was just too little too late. And so shocked would be the answer right away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I share that emotion of shocked, right? The hard part for me was that I couldn't really weave that narrative through,
Okay.
right? Like I knew what they said I'd done wrong, and I knew I'd done that wrong, and I knew that like there had been some tension in the past, but I had this overall paradigm of like where my relationship with my employer was and what kind of standing I was on. And
Yeah.
apparently that was entirely wrong. Like apparently my view of the relationship we had was not at all the relationship they thought we had, because yeah, like to me, it was hard because like I knew there was something in there, whether it was like the actual things I'd done wrong or whether it was how I had allowed the relationship to like get to that point where I needed to learn lessons from it. And I didn't want to turn away from those lessons and risk it happening at my next employer.
Exactly.
But of course, like, God, that really hurts your ego. And you'd really prefer to just find a narrative that says, oh, I was entirely in the right. I'm the victim. It's all their fault. Right.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and finding that balance of like, all right, where was I the victim and their fault? Where was it my fault and I need to fix myself? And figuring out those two and how they matched and where each place was in the story, I had a hard time with that. I think now I went on a hike on Sunday, and
Very
when
nice.
you have hours to walk in the woods, it's easier to make sense of things. I think now I fully understand where I went wrong and how the relationship got to where it was and how I missed the fact that I was on thin ice when I had no idea I was on thin ice. So now I think I have that narrative, but man, I'm telling you, the first day or two, like I didn't have that narrative to explain it, right? It was just like, I don't really know. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
don't really know why I got fired. I'm like, I know the reason they gave me and the things that were written on paper, right? Like,
Yep.
but it still didn't make sense. So now I think I've gotten to that point. But yeah, that was really fun. And I definitely share that shocked emotion.
Yeah, if you don't mind, before we move on, I did have a question for you because I find this interesting, and you know, I've seen it on your page, and I know I've gotten a lot of praise as well. What made you want to talk about it and share it just like we're doing now? What made you want to share it with, you know, with LinkedIn, with our sales communities? What made you want to step out and talk about, hey, I got fired? Because not many people do that.
Couple things. I would say one of the big reasons is that for myself, there are like three pillars I rest my life on, things that need to be true of my life at the end of my life, right? When my deathbed looking back. And one of those three pillars is I need to show the world a better way to live. There are so many scenarios in our life and our society where we all just kind of act a certain way because we think we have to act that way. And we all are scared to act differently because we think we'll be judged, right? And we're all mutually keeping this act up together. One innocent example of this is frantically cleaning your house before company comes over because it's
Yeah.
important that people believe you live in a clean house. And we all are trying to keep up the facade with each other that we live in clean houses. And we're all keeping this act up together rather than all just saying, my house is usually pretty messy, right?
Yep.
This was one example of it, right? But there's a lot of examples, right? In the way that, you know, especially I think a lot of times, one area that I see this too is like the way that men express their masculinity and show their vulnerability and show their emotions. We all have this mutual act we're keeping up for the benefit of each other, and this mutual act is hurting all of us, but we all feel like we have to keep it up.
Yes, exactly.
So there are a lot of things like that. And for me, that mantra of show the world a better way to live is basically saying, I will volunteer to be the first person to break that mold, to show people that there's a better way to parent, there's a better way to be an employee, there's a better way to be a husband, there's a better way to be a friend, right? And I'll be the one to be awkward and embarrassed and ashamed and all these negative things, so that by me doing that, the rest of the world can realize that they have permission to do that too. So one of those things that I've seen is on social media, people share highlights. They don't share low points.
Yeah.
And when you hear someone talking about the dark days of their life, they're always talking about it in retrospect after they've dug themselves out of it. And while they're on top of the world talking about, oh man, back 2 years ago, I was homeless, jobless, toothless, whatever it was, right?
Yes.
So for me, it was like, all right, one of my cornerstones of life is show the world a better way to live. And I think this being open and honest, sharing your shame, sharing your vulnerability, and sharing your life in a low point is something that needs to change about the world. And I think I might need to be the first person to lead the way and show that it's safe. So that is probably reason number one. The second thing too, though, is that I have realized in my life and learned from other people as well that shame thrives in darkness and in secrecy. When there's something you're ashamed of and you don't let anyone know, it grows and grows and grows, and its hold on you grows and grows. And the only thing that generally, generally makes that shame go away and makes it so that shame doesn't have control over you is when you're open and when you share it and when you're, honest about it. So part of the reason I did it was to live in alignment with my life's mission. Part of the reason I did it truthfully, because I knew it would bring relief. I knew what I was feeling would eventually go away if I was just open about it and talked about it enough and owned it. It felt terrible in the moment, and it was one of the most gut-wrenching things I've ever done to post it. But I did know in the back of my mind that this would eventually bring relief, similar to, having a dentist pull a tooth out. It might hurt at the moment, but it will bring relief in the end. And I knew that by sharing my shame, it would have less control over me, and I knew that was a way to get out from under it.
I love that mindset. I love your life principles, and I love how all of that came to fruition now. I mean, because mine was similar. I knew that I had to talk about it. And so with my situation, from professionals around me, yes, I have friends, but neither one of us have probably as close a group of friends as we do from a professional sales community on LinkedIn and on Rev Genius. And so, or whatever other communities that people are in. And so mine was kind of spur of the moment. I was like, I have to tell somebody about this, and I just need to hear what other people have done. That was my big thing, is that I wanted to see what other people have done and what they have said to employers and recruiters and to friends and family. And I shared it on Thursday Night Sales with Scott Leese and Amy Volas, and they were phenomenal. But the community, and even on Rev Genius, I mean, and that's where you and I have met. The community was so caring and loving. And I mean, and I know you've seen, I mean, I can't believe the amount of people that have said, I've been there, I've been fired, and here's where I'm at now. Like you said, the retrospect piece. And yes, they didn't talk about it before, but they're willing to give a helping hand now. And that's where my narrative came in, is I wanted to flip that as well. I wanted to take that helping hand that hundreds of people gave me, and I want to share our story. I want to share our story, and I want it to help other people as well, because it's going to happen to others, and I want this to be seen and heard by others.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing we both went through is shock, right? What's going on? Then, of course, you have to kind of weave a narrative in your mind, an explanation as to what happened and why. It took me a little longer than it took you, it sounds like, but we both got there.
Yeah.
For you, as you were wrestling with that shock and you were kind of finding your feet again, what was that next right thing that you did? What was that first action that you took?
Well, again, I text my wife. My mentor in my life is kind of my father-in-law, my wife's dad. He just like he is legit Superman. I mean, I'm not kidding. This man had I laugh and I just like, I cut my grass and I'm tired. Then I'm getting to the example. I'm like, I'm cutting my grass this weekend. It's hot. I'm like, oh, this is tiring. I want to push through because this man had COVID and he was at the end of his COVID phase and he's okay. And I'm not laughing because he had COVID. I'm laughing because he cut his grass while he had COVID, and he's got a big yard, so he doesn't have people around him. So he felt safe doing it, but he cut his grass while he had COVID. And it's just like, and he's 64, 60. I mean, it's just this like superhuman, like I have him on a pedestal. And so, first thing I did was I reached out to him, and he had, I talked to him about my work all the time, and he's like, he even said, I was afraid of that. I'm sorry to hear that. And he's like, we've got to here's what you need to do to make sure the family's taken care of. Do this, this, and this right away. He's like, but I'm going to let you get off the phone. He's like, just take it in, absorb it, and I'll talk to you in a bit. And so, just little words like that, like knowing that I failed and he had my back. And of course, my parents would too. It's just, my father-in-law and I have a great connection. But that was the first thing I did, was I reached out to my wife and then him. And his little words, meant so much. It was just take it in and then do what you need to do to make sure you stay on the right track. And so that right there, that was a lot. And granted, it took me a couple of days. I mean, it didn't happen as soon as I got off the phone, but I kept that in the back of my mind. And then from there, I had some mutual acquaintances, friends that I started with at the company reach out and say hello. But, like you said, I had to really take it in for a couple of days. And at that point, that's when I decided to share. So that's what I did. Yeah. What about you, Jonathan?
So like that, because I found out, late afternoon, right, 4:00, 4:30. So I, of course, told my wife right away.
Yeah.
I think I sent a quick little message to my family, like siblings and parents, to kind of let them know. Mm-hmm. Since I think we have some kind of family, we had a kid's birthday party to go to, so I went ahead and did that. So that kind of was the first few hours of just being at a kid's birthday party, trying to make small talk with other adults while I just lost my freaking job.
How hard is that though? Is that's so tough? Oh my gosh.
I mean, truthfully, I never do well at family events and kids' birthday parties. It's always tough to make awkward small talk with adults. So I don't know if it was that much worse, but
okay.
It was definitely tough to keep that face on. But then I got back. My wife went to put the kids to bed, and I went out on the back porch all alone, popped my headphones in, and just listened to some music. And
very nice.
Oh, that it's interesting to me how music, I really think what music is somehow human beings have figured out how to take emotion and turn it into sound waves. And you just listen to that right song that matches the emotion that you're feeling. Because like many men, right, I live most of my life just kind of pushing my emotions down to the side and focusing on the work in front of me. So when I have really strong emotions, a lot of times I don't exactly know how to let them out and how to take them. I think a lot of what was happening that evening is I was feeling a ton of things in my body. My body was feeling the emotion fully, but my mind wasn't really opening up to let all that emotion come through and get processed. So I used music for that. I was probably on the back porch for at least half an hour, if not an hour, just deeply, deeply connected to the music I was listening to, letting some of this emotion come out. That was incredibly powerful. And I think that kind of got me to the point where I was at least up on my feet again, right?
There you go. Okay, good.
then I made some notes to myself, that night about like things I might want to do and, how I might want to go about my job search. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I made quite a few notes there. A lot of times in the evening, I get these like creative bursts. So I was able to like write out a lot of even some of the things that I'm doing now, right, were things that I planned out that first night. Then the next day, like you, I got on the phone with people, right? I talked to each of my parents. I talked to my siblings. I talked to some friends.
Yep.
I spent a lot of time that first day just talking and again, kind of processing what had happened and struggling to process what had happened. I think that was a big part of emotionally putting me back together. And then I just started executing on that plan, right? I think the first day, because I was having so many conversations with people, I didn't get a lot of work done, but I at least laid some groundwork. The next day, I think I did a little bit more. And then I went on that hike on Sunday, which really, helped me process things finally. And then by the time Monday rolled around, I had a nice agenda laid out in front of me of, all right, here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm going about the job search. And
very nice.
Yeah, put stuff in place. So
I love that. It's funny that you talked about your agenda and your plan in place you had. So I actually didn't create an agenda right away. So it was more so you listen to music on your porch for 30 minutes to an hour. And that's great because you're right. Music, I've read that before, that the sound waves of music can actually make us react differently. Of course, we all know this, though, in terms of, sports we played and the life we've lived. But what I'm getting at is that this weekend, and I like doing it. It's enjoyable. One thing that helped me put myself at ease for a good hour, it's going to sound silly, I pulled weeds in my flower garden.
Yeah.
No, I really did. I went outside and and it was just like, it was like waking up for work when you're struggling, like where you feel that dread of just, I don't want to do this, but I push my emotions down. I have to get through it. That's a reaction with pulling weeds. Like no one wants to pull weeds. Yeah. But it was the weekend. My family was home. My wife and daughter were home, and I said, "I'm gonna go outside and pull these weeds." My wife was like, "Right now?" I was like, "I'm just gonna go pull the weeds."
Yeah.
Sure enough, I spent an hour pulling every single little weed I could find. Went out and then I should have done it first, but just because I was in my zone at the time, I went out and grabbed the weed spray too and sprayed over where I pulled everything, hoping that dang things don't grow back. But no, and then from there. And this was after I had shared my story and I was getting feedback and getting, nice messages and stuff with the community. But from there, I actually sat down with my wife and we talked about it. And she asked what my plan was. And again, I didn't have one right away. And it was more so that I keep telling myself I want to update my resume. And again, that's going to be in everyone's agenda when they lose their job. They have to. But then and recruiters and companies need that. But I tell myself what we're doing now, making these videos, like I've decided I'm going to make like a daily vlog of updates. I mean, even if it's not a successful, busy day, I'm going to make an update about how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what my next steps are. And for me, that has been my biggest point of all this, is that the videos I make, I want people to see the show that I can quickly get over things, that I can turn problems, and I'm calling it turning problems into positives. And that I can flip the script on this and that I can come back even better. And again, my resume, I'm almost putting on the back burner because I want people to see me. I don't want people to see my resume that talks about my successes. I can talk about those myself. I can talk about those now. But again, I'll have my resume. I'll give it to people, but I want people to really see me and who I am in the moment. And I think what we're doing and what I'll be doing with my vlogs is the best way to do that.
Here's the other thing that I think that does. I think it gives some meaning to the suffering, right? When you can say, I'm going to document this so other people can learn from it. I'm going to document this and share my dark emotions so that other people can have an easier time dealing with theirs, right? I think that was another big part of, you asked me why I decided to be so public about it. I think that's a big part of it. It gave meaning to the suffering because if it was just me suffering through shame and guilt, humiliations, identity crisis, it was meaningless. But if I opened that up and let other people in, if my suffering allowed them to work through their problems better, and if my blueprint allowed them to navigate that better when it came their way, then suddenly it all had meaning. And if it's something about being human, we can endure almost any pain if there's a deep enough meaning tied to it. So yeah, I think that's awesome. That idea of yours is awesome. In fact, something that I even saw recently gives me more reason to believe that'll work well. So for a long time, there's been a trend of people like recording themselves video gaming and posting those videos on YouTube for
That's
other people
right.
to watch,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Someone in the sales community, actually, I think it's official now, so I can say it, Justin Michael is starting basically a esports league for
I've seen it.
SDRs.
I've seen
Yep.
it.
I don't know
Yes.
the details of it. Basically, it sounds like people are going to like live stream themselves prospecting and say, here's how I'm doing it. I almost think a similar feel could be there for you, where you just every day check in and say, hey guys, here's what I'm doing today.
Mhm.
Right? And then people get to follow along and learn from you. And I think if we were successful, man, I'm jealous I didn't think of it first.
well, no, but then think of it that way. That esports, I mean, if it turns into that, where we're actually, and granted, our conversations, we have to be careful, obviously, for privacy with who we're talking to. But I mean, put it this way: if you and I feel like we're struggling or we're in a moment of just sorrow and down on ourselves while working, imagine being on camera and knowing as you're talking or typing an email and talking through your day while working. I can just imagine myself knowing that I'm recording myself being in such a different mood and feeling and just that's going to elevate our work so much. Hell, even if I don't share it, if I'm recording myself for anything and I just keep it personal, I'm going to elevate what I'm doing just naturally, just because the spotlight's on me. So yeah, no, I again, I think I think what we're doing is great. And I think, I don't want to call it a movement yet, but it's just the fact that, and I know you've seen, I mean, I say a movement in the sense that you commented on my post saying you had just gotten fired, same way, out of nowhere, out of the blue. And it just, and I'm not like, I smiled and I laughed to myself, and it wasn't like a laugh towards you. It was just like almost a relief. Like it was, and I don't mean that negatively. It was just like, I'm not the only one going through this. And then again, you and I connected and what we're doing. I just think there are so many going through that. I talked to a young lady who has been fired consecutively from jobs, and she still received references from some of the top people in sales, like professionals and financial worlds, for another job. And it just goes to show that people can recover, people can rebound. And again, when the spotlight's on, especially what we're doing now, I think we can shine a brighter light on how to make all of this a positive, but make ourselves better.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, man. I love hearing about your strategies going forward. I'm happy that you were part of my strategy, right? So these interviews here were part of that strategy I cooked up of how to take a problem, turn it into a positive. So I appreciate being a part of that. And yeah, let's do our best to help each other going forward, eh?